Hello and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're watching this in the afternoon. I'm Martin Cross. This is Cross's Corner, and we've got a really special edition of Cross's Corner today, which I'm very excited about. You can see I've got Paul Fielden and Stuart West. These guys are going to introduce themselves to you just shortly, but this is all about kayaking and canoeing. It's around the DW race, the Devizes to Westminster, the famous race, the Everest of canoeing. And we're going to talk about the race, its history, and how it's been specially adapted in this COVID year. And we're going to get into that shortly. But Paul and Stuart, could you say hi and just introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah, hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So I'm Paul Fielden. I'm the Trophy Secretary for the DW organisation, role I've had for a couple of years now. And my involvement with the race really started in 1984, was my first year.
Wow.
I've done the race probably more times than I care to imagine. I think I've entered it 18 times and I've completed it 13. So and believe you me, there's a lot of people that have got many more years on their clock than I have. But delighted to be here and share some information about it for you.
That's fantastic. And Stuart, how about you?
Hi, I'm Stuart West. I'm the entry secretary for the DW. I've been doing that since 2009, I think. So just over 11 years. I've done the race a lot less than Paul. I've only done it sort of 4 times. So 3 times in K2 and once in K1. So been lucky enough to win it twice. So once in K1, once in K2. So
that's sensational.
Over the years.
That's sensational. We're going to talk about that, Stuart, and get into that. So you're a double winner of the Devizes to Westminster.
Yes. So 2011 in K1 and 2013 in K2. So
yeah.
Seems to be, lots of people seem to be hesitant for me to do it because whenever I do the race, it's particularly arduous conditions. 2013 was particularly cold. I think it was -7 overnight. So ice everywhere, which wasn't particularly pleasant.
Wow. Do you have to be a little bit, I mean this in the nicest possible way, do you have to be a little bit mad or obsessed to be successful in the Devizes to Westminster, or are you just like a normal bloke? I mean,
I don't think there's any kayakers that are normal people. But, you know, generally it gets to you. First year I did it, it was just let's try this. We did, me and guy that I did it with did Waterside Sea and did quite well, and thought, well, we could have a go at this DW thing, and then did that, and we were 5th that year because we had a number of complete nightmares. I went blind for one, so I couldn't see.
You went blind?
Yeah, I couldn't. Don't know why. Still don't know what it is, but the cold air in my eyes meant that my eyes just went white. So if I looked at you, you couldn't see my eyeballs, and I thought it was foggy. For quite a while, I was saying it's really foggy, and it was only when I think we got to Chertsey where I paddled virtually straight into the lock, where the people that were in the boat said it's not foggy, and the support crew said, you know, you can't see. So
put him in the back, quick! Don't let him steer.
Yeah, I wanted to go in. I didn't want to stop because I said, well, it's
no.
Know. So they put me in the back of the boat, and I paddled from the back. So
when did your sight return?
It started getting better by the time we'd got to Westminster. So it wasn't perfect. It was still a bit misty, but by 2 or 3 hours after getting to Westminster, it was fine again. So
you talk about it like it's almost normal.
Well, it is for me now, because every time I've done the DW, I apart from K1, but the straight through, the last time I did it, I didn't go blind, but I wore glasses all the way. So either sunglasses or safety glasses, just to keep the wind out of my eyes, and that stopped it.
Yeah.
So the second time I did the race, where we were second, I started to go blind, and we swapped straight away. So we'd got it all set up so that it was a very quick change. So it took about a minute to change the seats, and I went in the back. So the first time it was about 30 minutes because we weren't set up for it at all.
Yeah.
Second time it was far quicker, and we're off and going. But we lost the race by 45 seconds.
That's
so the winners
crushing.
Well, we came across the line, and we were winning by, I think it was an hour, or that it was a reasonable distance, and the last crew came in really, really late, and literally just got through the Tideway in time, and they beat us by 45 seconds.
Oh,
so,
wow! So Stuart, I'm gonna interrogate you more about this this incredible race, and you know, the amazing fortitude that you've shown to do it. I kind of want to ask Paul, you know, what is so special about this race that you've done it so many times and you've been involved with it for so long?
I think Stuart alluded to it. It's a kind of almost like a drug. If you're a canoeist or a kayaker, it's the race on the calendar that you look at and think, well, one year I'll have a go at that, because look, it's kind of unique. If you do the doubles event, senior doubles, it's 125 miles non-stop, and as I said, you know, crews set a benchmark of average cruise of 24 hours. 20 hours is a nice number to hit. Stuart will be looking in the 16, 17 hours because he's an elite canoeist. And then, but look, there's boats that do it over 30 hours and will go for the second time. But for me, it was
when you say the second tide, Paul.
Well, so the race starts in Devizes. You follow the Kennet and Avon Canal to Reading. You pick up the Thames at Reading. You go down the Thames with a little bit of flow to Teddington, and then of course from Teddington onwards to Westminster Bridge, it's tidal. So you're never going to paddle against an incoming tide. So you have to hit the tide at low tide or just after low tide on the ebb tide. So you get a little bit of push carried down the tideway, and you don't end up having to paddle, which you can't do against the tide. So actually, your start time is governed by how long you think you will take to get to Teddington. So that's what Stuart was saying. I mean, typically you're not racing anybody other than your own clock to get to your window at Teddington, and you've got 108 miles for Teddington. It's quite often that you don't actually. I mean, I don't know any boat that's been on their schedule the whole race, because something goes wrong. You're either a bit quicker here, a little bit slower there, something breaks, you get an injury, you've got to do a little bit of repairs, all sorts of things. So it's quite you have to have a window for your arrival time at Teddington to allow for that contingency. So you can get down the Tideway, and one year I did it, we were second boat home.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were first, but we knew we weren't going to be first once the other boats started coming in. I mean, we were third by, I think, just over a minute, or I think it was 3 or 4 minutes. So it's quite, you know, there's a lot of boats that come in a very similar time. But for me, you know, it all started in 83 when I supported a good friend of mine. So you have to have bank support. You can't do this on your own. You have to have a support crew on the bank that follow you all the way down in cars. They feed and water you. They repair your supplies. They can repair the boat. The one thing they can't do is move the boat. They're not allowed to move the boat at all. So if you have to repair the boat, you've got to move it sort of sideways away from the canal so that they can fix it. But I was a bank crew for one of my friends, and they unfortunately didn't finish. They got they pulled out at Sunbury, but But we got a friend of mine in the car with me said, "Well, we could do this." We used to do canoeing with scouts, but nothing like. I mean, these are racing craft. These aren't your general purpose boats. They're very long and skinny. So we picked up the boat off the crew that hadn't finished, went out on the Monday on the canal at Reading, and fell out loads of times. But that was it, and we paddled every weekend from there on. And I think then it gets in your blood. So the first year we did just over 20 hours and 17 minutes or something. And we said, right, our target was 20 hours. We got to do it again. We got to break 20 hours. And then the next year we broke 20 hours, but we came 11th, which was first year we came 8th. So we said, right, we've got to get back to the top 10 finish. So we did it again. And then I had a year where we didn't finish for injury reasons. So the next year I said, right, well, I'm not finishing on a non-finish, so I'm going to do it K1, which is a different event, and it's over 4 days, different challenges. And then the next year, someone called me and said, "Are you racing this year?" Usually, you decide around Christmas time, and I said, "Well, I haven't decided. Well, do you want to do it with me?" Well, okay, then. So then we started training, and it just went on every year. It was just like it was part of the calendar.
Why is the K1 in stages?
K1 is a single. It's a single.
Yeah, but why is that in stages as opposed to through the night?
Because it's deemed too dangerous to let single paddlers paddle 125 miles non-stop. I mean, I know people that have done it unofficially, but it's not a recognised class or race for us. It's just too dangerous, really. I mean, my first year. I mean, Stuart will tell you about going blind. One of the things that I did my first year is we got out a lock on the wrong side of the boat. We were so disorientated, so tired that with the bank was on our left to get out, and we got out on the right. Whoa. And fell straight in.
Yeah.
In 2013, me and Dan went to put the boat down, and we were thinking that the water was like 2-3 foot down, but dropped the boat, and it dropped from the top of the lock sort of 15-20 foot down to the bottom, and I had to climb down a ladder to pick the boat up again. Thankfully it wasn't damaged or anything like that. It just dropped a long way, but you're just so tired, and you don't really, you think you've seen things or whatever, so fatigue is massive. How do
you prepare for that, Stuart? Because I know people have to do a long run before they do the London Marathon and do a kind of training program, but how do you prepare for that level of fatigue?
You do a lot of races or events where they're long and you're doing long paddles, but you just can't prepare for 17 hours, 18 hours in a boat. You just can't do it. So you're just doing a number of long paddles, and that's just, we did with me and Dan, we did some sort of 3-4 hour paddles.
Yeah.
But that was about as far as we'd ever go. And previous to that, we'd done some sort of like, with my previous K2 partner, we'd done some sort of 3-4 hour paddles. Waterside D, which takes in the first 35 miles of the race, that's like 5 hours, 4.5 to 5 hours
for you.
And that's a good sort of benchmark to do. Once you get past sort of 5 hours, it doesn't get much worse, in my view. Anyway, you're tired, and you're not going down very much. It's just making sure that you keep your hydration and energy intake up. So one of the big mistakes is eating and drinking too much generally.
Oh, tell me why.
Well, because your stomach can't. Lots of people have to pull out for stomach problems. So you're either being sick or you've got intestinal problems, because your body just can't digest all of that food and water. So you tend to get it so that you just feel bloated and terrible. And then you can't eat or drink, so you go the other way, and it's this keeping a balance of not eating or drinking too much, but not eating or drinking too little. And it really is a sort of fine line that you have to. That's one of the things that you can prepare for, getting in training, knowing what you can do. So in training, I got so that I knew if I drank more than 600 ml of water an hour, then I'd get bloated, and if I drank less, then it was too little. But so I got it. So I knew if I had a bottle, or drinking hydration bag, I could drink 600 ml an hour, and I'd be fine, and I could keep going. I'd tend to have energy drinks in there, and salts and stuff like that, to keep my I've forgotten what they're called.
Electrolytes.
That's the one. Electrolytes up, and used energy gels and things like that. I tend not to use that much food when I'm racing, just because it just takes too much to digest. Little bits like chocolate brownies, or something to keep your stomach from being completely empty, but that's about it.
But I think the other thing about training is we used to use the training runs to learn what we could eat, because what you as Stuart says, what you can digest or even swallow when you're paddling, it's so varied. Like you might fancy chocolate and Mars bars all the way down. When you've been going for 10 hours, the last thing you want to see is a Mars bar. So if all you've got prepared with your support crew is Mars bars, because that's what you've eaten on your training runs, then you're absolutely stuffed. I mean, I remember one year I had a craving for oranges.
Wow.
Yeah? And I made that known to the support crew at 9:30 at night that I wanted an orange at the next lock. So they had to go and find an orange. We were somewhere near Reading or somewhere. They had to find like a 24-hour shop and buy a bag of oranges, and then peel it, and then shove it in my face when we got to the next lock. And I think training, you can practice all sorts of things in paddling, but one of the things that I think DW, if I was advising anybody, is practice what you're going to drink, what you're going to eat, how you're going to do it. What as Stuart's saying, how much you can drink. I used to reckon a pint an hour was about, but in the night when you've been going for that long, you don't want to drink a pint an hour. You can't do it, but actually you need that level of energy in your body to sustain your muscles. So the support crew, certainly my support crew, were sort of gauging how much we drank from the drink bottles when they took them off to change them, because we had designated change points. They were saying, right, you've not drunk half of this. You need to drink more, because in an hour's time, 2 hours time, you're going to be suffering.
So relative to when the race starts, when does it get dark? And are you finishing in the dark, or is it get light again?
That's one of the things with that is it depends on the DW sort of, it's a number of races, challenges, whatever, all in one. So for the top people, or start off with the slower crews, they all start off at 7 in the morning, and they might not be finishing for 30 hours. So they'll go through the entire day, a night, and then be still going the next day. And then there's a graduation between sort of people that start at 7, they'll finish it on the first tide, and they'll have been going for, depending on the event, because the tide changes every year. They might be 24 hours, they might be 28 hours, people starting at 7 in the morning. But then the top crews that are going for the win might be starting, I think once I started at 4:30.
Really?
In the afternoon. So it was, and if the clocks, the first time I did it, the clocks were just, they hadn't gone back yet. So it was the weekend before the clocks went back.
Yeah.
So it was going dark at sort of 6 o'clock. So we set off at 4:30, and we'd only got 2 hours ish in the light. So it was dark at, within, we hadn't got into the first set of locks that much before it was dark. So we did the majority of the canal, which is where the majority of the locks are, in at night. So for some people, they'll be getting towards Reading and done all of the canal by the time it gets dark.
Yeah.
Because the Thames is, times wise, it's about halfway, but distance wise, it's 55 miles. So, and that's in the 55 miles, you've actually got about 50 odd portages. Because there's 77 in total, and I can't remember exactly what it is by the time you get to the Thames, but it's in the 50s. So,
do you get, when you get a portage at a lock, is that like, oh great, I can rest, I can stretch my body? Did you look forward to them, or are they pain in the arses, or how does it?
I mean, it depends how you feel about running, but it's not relaxing. My heart rate tended to go up when I was doing portages because you're getting out and you're running.
Do you wear a pulse meter?
I did, yeah. So
what was your pulse during?
It was going between 160 and 170, depending on what we were doing for the entire race.
Your pulse was that high for the whole race?
Yeah.
You're joking?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
So I think I generally run quite high on pulse rates anyway.
Yeah.
But
what's your base rate?
Well, 46-ish.
Whoa.
Generally. So currently it's about 55, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. So today my resting was 49. So that's typical. But when I'm doing hard efforts, I'll go up to 180, 185. So 160 is if I'm doing a steady effort, 160 is what I'd be aiming to get to.
And do you get, when the dawn comes up, do you get a buzz when the light comes up? Or what's that like?
It's definitely a positive time. I'm not sure buzz is the right word, but it makes you feel a lot better when you get into dawn. It starts getting light again, and for most people, you're starting to get towards Teddington at that point, because depending on when the tide is, that you sort of tide times tend to be sort of 4-ish, 5. So you're normally getting towards, even if it's the tide's at 8, you're getting towards Teddington, generally, by the time that it's getting light. So, you're getting towards, getting towards the finish. You've still got 2 hours once you get to Teddington, but everybody tends to look at Teddington as being near the finish.
Homeward stretch, yeah.
Even though, like I say, it's almost 2 hours from Teddington to Westminster. So it's not great to be thinking that you're home at that point, but the Tideway can be the hardest.
There are quite a few boats that give up on the Tideway. Some
really?
because some because they're just they've got to Teddington and they're completely exhausted. They'll give it a run down, but they just can't get to the end. There's
must be heartbreaking.
Oh yeah. It's in a way it's probably worse to do that than give up early. People that give up early usually because of a major injury or a catastrophic boat failure. There's only a few moving parts on a boat. It's amazing. It always amazes to me, that people haven't checked all that, and you see them on the bank trying to fix their rudder or their steering gear, and you think, well, there's a bit of prep there required. I used to look at, you know, about when it's light. I mean, Easter's governed by the moon, the tides are governed by the moon. So you kind of think, well, actually every year, even though the date moves, you know, and it can be as early as end of March or as late as middle of April. So the weather conditions, as Stuart has said earlier, you know, can be massive. I mean, I did it with my daughter a few years ago in the Veteran Junior, and it was 20 degrees. It was boiling. You know, really hot, and that presented an enormously different set of challenges to doing it like when it's -7. You know, massive challenges. Yeah,
2011.
I mean, all your drinks have to be diluted because you can't be drinking energy drinks at the concentration you've trained with, because you'll just you know, you just have too much sugar in your system. So yeah. But you know, I mean, I always used to say sort of Chertsey, Shepperton, the sun starts to come up. You get at my level, you've got a lift, you've got a buzz. You kind of like the boat seemed to pick up. You've got an extra half a mile an hour of speed. It seemed to feel like, it probably didn't. The portages are then light, and the one thing I think Stuart, you know, probably was too modest to admit, is that when you're paddling in the dark, and particularly if you've got a night canal run, you know, those portages on the canal are not always easy. You know, they're always in the middle of nowhere. They're always dark. And it can add 15, 20, 30 seconds to every portage. If you've got a boat doing that in the light over 50 knots, that's half an hour on your time.
We're just going to welcome Adrian Cassidy to our chat now, who's joining us from his car.
Hey, Crossy, how you doing?
I'm great, Adrian. Having my sort of eyes agog chat about this race, which I knew a bit about, but listening to the stories of Stuart and Paul, I'm just like full of huge admiration, respect for these completely mad people that do this race.
Yeah, I was hoping to do it last year, but then COVID stopped me. So yeah, I think it's mental.
Yeah. So now Adrian's with us. It would be good just to. I want to come back to talk about the race and you know you know, the great paddlers of the past and your victories in 2011 and 2013, Stuart. Well, I think now Adrian's with us, let's get on to the race this year, because it's a very different format, and you know why it is such a different format, and then we can maybe talk about Ludum's involvement making all this possible. So go for it.
Well, I mean, we started. I mean, the race planning sort of starts in earnest, sort of October, November time. And if you remember back then, you know, we weren't sure if we were going to be coming out of lockdown. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to hold the race. You know, paddlers traveling across the country to get there and then go through different counters and different tier levels. So we kind of prepared for a COVID secure race. And we got in touch with all the local authorities. We created a document. We worked out how you could do a COVID secure race, and understand that, you know, when you're on this race, if you watch the race, you know, it's not like there's 50 boats coming down the river at any one time, you know, in one mass. Yeah. They're all spread out, and ideally, as we've talked about, trying to hit the tide window, all the boats should arrive in Teddington within about an hour of each other. So we thought we could run a COVID race. And then when it became pretty clear, sort of early part of this year, that there was no way we were coming out of lockdown, we couldn't run it. The committee said, look, you know, we've have to cancel this year. We cancelled last year. 3-4 years ago, we had to stop the race at Reading because of the water conditions. So, you know, we need to get this race or something out there for the paddling community, you know, if nothing else, to keep the DW brand in their minds, because 60-odd% of the paddlers that do the race, the senior race, are first timers.
Wow. There's
only a few nutters that do it more than once. And these people, you know, have got they're mentally psyched up for doing it, and then we have to cancel. So we wanted to give people the option of doing something. Look, it isn't DW, it's not the classic challenge, but go out there, paddle locally, paddle 125 miles, do it over several sessions or many sessions, and just raise some money for charity. That's really the aim. So to get the community out there paddling and raise some money for a worthy cause. And for the junior classes, the schools provide 90% of the entrance, and they typically do it in their lower sixth year, because obviously upper sixth year they've got A levels, lower sixth year they do it for D&E or something. So there's years where the schools have not been able to do that. Paddlers that would have wanted to do it through their school haven't been able to do it. So the reason we're running IDW from Easter, which is the DW date, right up until the early June, is to cover both Easter holidays and Whitsun holidays, so the school paddlers can actually do it. That's why we've not done it over the Easter weekend. We said, right, it's a different event. Let's make it a longer duration, so you can capture most people.
So, how did you guys hook up with Ludum then?
It was actually Ian Wynn, who's
oh, I know Ian Wynn.
Yeah, he's a
Athens
a
Olympics.
kayaker. Yeah, so he got in.
Bronze medal.
I used to paddle with Ian's brother a long time ago. Probably getting on for 30 odd years ago.
He came down to the Athens Olympics with his foot in a plaster, or so he'd gone over on his foot or something, I seem to recall.
Yeah, I think he injured his ankle
a
couple of days before or the day before. So Ian got in touch with me on Facebook and said, have you looked at Ludum? They do this. I think they'd be a good match. So then I got in touch with Adrian and said, do you think we can do something with this? Is it a goer? And here we are.
So what are Ludum bringing to the party, Adrian, and how's it going to work?
So basically, when the first lockdown happened, we realized that everybody was going to go remote. So we actually quite quickly turned around and just built a challenges feature in our system. And basically it means that people can do their training or whatever with a GPS or heart rate device like a Garmin or a Polar or whatever, or even use our app. And it just records your training and it puts it into a challenge. So if people set up a challenge, then all the data automatically goes in there and you can track a leaderboard and see who's doing it or all that kind of stuff. And we just love the idea of what Paul and Stuart were trying to do. Like, because so many people have missed out on racing this year, that to create some sort of sense of community without copying the race online, we thought was a great idea. And basically all the people who enter via the website on the DW website, Stuart and Paul and I will just basically set it up properly in Ludum, and then as soon as people start doing their paddles, we'll just start sort of counting up all the miles they've done until they get to their 202 kilometers they're doing.
One of the things that I expect to happen is there will be people that are because it's over a month. Is it 2 months? There'll probably be a lot of people that go for 9 weeks. They'll probably be looking at how many DWs they can do in 9 weeks.
You're joking.
Like I said, that there are a lot of people in the kayaking world that will see 125 miles over 9 weeks not being a challenge enough. So they'll see how many they can do in 9 weeks. And there will be people that are doing a good few DWs over 9 weeks.
You're kidding.
I suspect. I suspect we will have some paddlers that do the staged event, which is over the Easter weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They will do their paddling over those 4 days, and they will do. They'll replicate as best they can the race. They'll do 35 miles on the Friday. They'll do 36 miles on the Saturday, 38 on the Sunday, and then they'll do the equivalent of the Tideway on the Monday. And they'll have done their My DW. They'll have done it over the Easter weekend. And then as Stuart says, they'll probably do the same again several times over. There is a club called the 1,000 Mile Club, which is for any paddler that has done completed 8 DWs, which obviously is 1,000 miles. Now, we won't go into the nuances of the A or the B club. The A club is recognised as those that have done 1,000 miles non-stop. but actually that's an elite club, and then there's those that have got a couple of singles or juniors or stage races in there. I suspect, and I don't know this, but I suspect there may be some people out there thinking they might be able to get in 1,000-mile club over the 9 weeks. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a strange breed. But
so if people are listening to this or you know, and think, oh, I fancy doing that. That sounds like a challenge. What do they need to do, and how does it work for the new punter wanting to join in this great challenge?
Well, I think first and foremost, let's, you know, people have got to be safe. Okay, so canoeing, kayaking it's a water sport. It has got its own dangers, you know, listed with that. So we wouldn't advocate anybody that's not been in a boat, you know, to just go out and try and buy something and try and paddle it, right? I mean, you know, we want to encourage as many people as possible to do it, but we also want them to be safe and responsible. So, you know, if they're not necessarily first timers, but if they're beginners, then doing it through a club would be fantastic, having all the right safety equipment and everything else. But effectively, you know, putting that, you know, to one side, someone that's interested, there's a lot of information about it on our entry page on the Devizes to Westminster website. You can enter through that. You can read the guidelines that we've got. You can read all about the race on that. And you enter through that, but as I say, I must reiterate, you know, the prime with it, you know, it's here. You know, we want them to do it, but be safe. You know, we don't want any crazy instances or any, you know, any sort of any bad press about this. You know, they've got to be safe. They've got to paddle responsibly, and they've got to paddle within the restrictions that we have. You know, the COVID restrictions.
Yeah, I did see. You know, I'm thinking about time. You know, how quickly you could do the event, and I know there's something on your guidance that's to say it's about doing it more than it is around the time. But I'm kind of thinking the group of sort of rowers that I'm involved with, they're doing this Thames challenge, and they're kind of doing it in 100 or 200 meter chunks to get a quicker time. And I'm wondering, and there's something, is there about, you've asked paddlers to go out and back from the same point, so they're going with and against the stream to kind of even things out. Is that right?
Well, so on the DW, you would paddle the canal, which effectively, arguably, has got no flow at all. But there's a tiny bit of flow against you on the way to Crofton, and then when you get to Crofton, which is the highest point on the canal, that's 20 miles in. Then as you go down from Crofton to Reading, you could argue there's a little bit of flow there. It picks up the River Kennet every now and again. So once you get towards Newbury, you start to get bits of river coming in. So there's a bit of flow there. And of course, the Thames is all downstream. And the Tideway, you know, if you've got the right tide and it's a big tide, you can add 2 or 3 miles an hour to your boat speed. What we wanted to try to do was to avoid people, firstly, doing a 30-mile paddle from A to B, because that isn't a local paddle. That would contravene, you know, government restrictions. And it would be, you know, we wouldn't want to be suggesting that people can just sort of drive around the countryside doing their paddling. The other thing is, you know, some people don't have, you know, they might have a reservoir that their canoe club's on, and they have to paddle around a lake. Some will be on canal, some will be on the Thames, some will be on fast flowing water. So to try and even it up and make it a little bit more of a level playing field, we said, right, let's go A to B to A. That's it. It's you know, paddle out and back. So firstly, to make sure it's local, and secondly, to negate any advantage you might find by going downstream only.
Yeah. Adrian, how much adaptation has Ludum had to sort of go through with its program? Because I know normally Ludum would be associated with water sports, mainly rowing, but how much adaptation have you had to put into?
None at all, actually. None at all. We set it up. We had canoeing and other sports, cycling and running and stuff like that in mind anyway. So all the challenges, you can do whatever sport type you want to do, really. And then simply, you know, your data automatically comes in from whatever wearable device you have, and we just simply add it up and generate a leaderboard. I mean, we even set it up so we can do challenges by heart rate, so we can count people's number of heartbeats they do in a period of time. So,
I think Stuart would win that one.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is, I think what Devizes to Westminster have done is the difference between compete or complete. You know, and I think this year, Devizes to Westminster for me seems like there's an element of people trying to go quickly. There's a lot of people who just want to finish it. And I think with this challenge, it's pretty much just finish it. And the odd person is going to compete by trying to do 1,000 miles or 8 DWs in the time period. So this one's been set up just based to count your meters. And then if you get, I mean, if I'm right, Paul and Stuart, if you get the distance, you get a little prize as a token of having done it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, DW, we had to be very careful that we didn't, I say undermine is not maybe the right word. We didn't want to conflict this with the real DW. This is got a different name. It's my DW, so it's individuals' own challenge. We will be giving a memento out to say that you've done it. You know, we have one trophy that we will award. We have over 60 for the race normally, but we have one that's donate or given to the crew or the paddler that's raised the most money for charity.
Oh wow!
And look, in previous years we've had numbers. You know, £50,000, £80,000 people have raised by doing the race on their own. And we have that. So that's the FIFA Cup. So we will be awarding that to, you know, paddlers that want to go out and get sponsorship for completing. You know, the one that raises the most money will be awarded the FIFA Cup. But there's no other trophy. We have everybody that finishes the DW gets a finisher's medal, which is, you know, a prized possession for a lot of people. You know, that's why they do it. And they stick it on their wall with their certificate. So this year we're not giving medals. You know, we're making the medals are very special. So we've got a memento, and we will probably produce a certificate. You know, a unique certificate that we will give them to say that they've done it.
Can we talk about some of the great DWs of the past and the most famous winners?
I'll keep quiet then.
I was going to say that there aren't that well. The famous winners are going to be Brian Greenham and
Tim Cornish.
Yeah.
What makes them famous?
Because they still hold the record some 30 odd years after they set it. And although it's unofficially been broken once.
Why unofficially? Someone's just done it.
Well, no, the race was called off halfway through because of a safety incident where the flow was so fast that somebody had gone over a Windsor Weir.
Yeah, oh God.
So, and there was security out, and so everybody got pulled in at that point because it was deemed that it was unsafe to carry on. But one crew had got to that point and they were on winning record pace, and they beat the record by I think about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So but other than that, I think it's been about 15 minutes behind the record is about the close, mate.
Well, the Wells boys did. I think they were 5 minutes behind, weren't they?
Yeah,
they were smack on schedule to Teddington, and then they just couldn't sustain it through the down the Tideway.
Do you have to have
that record? The record was set in 79, 15 and a half hours, give or take. And if you think about that, and what makes it so remarkable is the canal in those days was not as renovated as it is now. I mean, a lot of the locks, a lot of the portages were just ram your boat into the reeds and climb out into the mud and then run round. The towpaths were just mud. They weren't not necessarily paved, but they certainly weren't, proper footpaths as they are now. Now, people will argue that the portaging in those days was as quick, if not quicker, than it is today, with all the stanchions that are put up and all the nice get out. But I've seen photographs. I mean, first year I paddled was 84. There were, bits of that canal were dry. You had to run a mile and a half of it where there was no water in it. And these guys were doing it with equipment, wooden paddles, glass fiber boats, none of your thermal kit that you've got these days, the clothing. Can you imagine the clothing that they'd be wearing in 79? Woolly jumpers and stuff, and woolly hats, heavy equipment, and they've not been touched.
Wow.
That record says that. Now, the other argument is the Thames was high. The Thames was high in that year. Would the race have been carried
postponed.
on. If it was this year, would we, if it was the same conditions, would we say actually it's too dangerous? But it does, that record is it's one of the, in all the sporting records, it's probably, to stand as long as it has, against all the improvements that have gone on in the sport is quite remarkable.
Yeah. Stuart, what do you learn about yourself from doing the DW? I'm imagining, you said you can't really train to do an event that long, except go for these 2 or 3 hour paddles. Well, what have you learned about yourself through doing it?
That I can turn off my brain, I think, just keep going. The DW is one of those events that the more mistakes you make, the more you want to do it the next time. Like the first year, with my partner snapped a set of paddles. I hit a bridge. I went blind. We weren't prepared for a number of things, so we weren't prepared to change seats and all that sort of stuff. So being prepared for the race is a massive thing, and thinking about all the eventualities. But mental toughness, I didn't once think about stopping. And I don't know whether that's, but both me and the guy that I paddled with said, we're not going to be responsible for stopping. If a support crew tells us to stop, then we'll stop. But because neither of us wanted to stop. So we sort of abdicated any sort of responsibility for our health, you might say, to our support crew. So if they said, you stop, then we were going to stop. But if they deemed that we could carry on, then we were carrying on, whatever it was. And then the second year, we sort of did the same, because we did it twice in 2 years. And the second year, we were far more prepared, and it was all about being prepared, the DW.
Yeah. Do you view your achievement winning in the single as on the same level or higher or less than your achievement in winning in the double?
It's well, I don't know. If I was to say it was easier to do it in the single than it was to do it in the double, then because the singles, it was on the first day I was second by about 20 seconds, and then just took half an hour out of everybody on the second day. I don't know whether that's because I'd prepared for it and sort of had recovered better or what, or whether I was just so angry at the fact that I wasn't winning it that I went completely nuts. Because I know I took out a lot of time in the first sort of 4 miles. I caught up. When in the singles, you start off in staggered, so you start off at 2-minute intervals. The top paddlers, and I caught up the person in front of me. Paul will know this. From where we started, I caught him up at the first lock after Newbury.
Wow. So
where you go, second one. So you go over the bridge, and then so it's about 2 miles. Maybe 2 and a bit miles. So I caught up 2 minutes in 2 and a bit miles. And that was sort of what set me up, because then I got somebody to work with. So we worked together, and I think I finally dropped him at sort of just coming onto the Thames, where I got a number of other people to paddle with at that point. So,
I guess
so on the singles event, because you've got those intervals to start with, it is possible to end up in a group, and working in a group where you can sit on the wash of the boat in front, and you can actually share the work around. And if you're working together, you can pull yourself away from the following pack or the guys that and given, of course, because you're starting kind of in reverse order. If you've caught the boat in front, you've really caught them.
Yeah.
Whereas in the K2 event, you catch the boat in front, but you don't know if they started behind you and they passed you and you didn't see them in the dark. That happens a lot. Yeah.
Oh wow! And I know the Olympic distance is, it's a sprint event, 200 meters, and distances up to 1,000 meters. Do any foreign or international competitors or Olympic competitors try their luck on an event like this?
I mean, I think there are Olympians that have done it.
Yeah.
Ivan Lawler did the DW. He was one of the people that went for the record. I think it was 2011, same year. Right, it was the same year I did the K1, and they were going for the record, and were well under the record pace when they got to Reading. But then Ben Brown, who's world champion as well, he had forearm problems or elbow problems, and they had to pull out at about Marlow, I think it was, around that sort of area. So sort of 3/4 of the way, but they were still they were starting to slow down because Ben had got a bad arm. His arm was injured, but still horrendously fast. They were probably still on well sub 16-hour pace, which is, there's only 5 or 6, 7 crews that have gone under 16 hours. So
got a question there from Ian Weir, guys. So is there an international brother or a brotherhood of canoers and kayak on that are quite friendly towards each other? Or when you talk about that rivalry, how fierce is it?
It's one of those things where nobody would do anything that harmed anybody else, but at the start of the race, when you're getting towards the people that are going to win it, there is very much like, to give you an example, before I became entry secretary, if you were starting after 12 o'clock midday, you had to give the entry secretary your start time. But when I became entry secretary, that meant that everybody had to give me their start time, which would have given me a rather large advantage, because I'd know when everybody was planning and what their schedules were. So that then had to change because nobody wanted to give me their start time. Because it's a closely guarded secret, sort of, when you're going to set off. And it's generally, a lot of people say it is, if you set off last, then you're sort of, you're in a position where you know what's going on because you know what everybody else has done. But you have to have the, I suppose, the strength of knowledge that you're capable of hitting the Tideway when you start off at that time. I know when me and Dan won it in 2013, we set off last, but not because we'd set off last, just because we'd set a time when we were going to do it. We went off to have some food and everything, and when we came back, everybody had gone. So it was like, oh, best get on and get going, really. So at that point, it becomes very much, there's a lot of secrecy and rivalry around it. But on the water, if you went past somebody and they were struggling, or you'd be very supportive. I'm not sure if, as long as they were safe, I'm not sure you'd be helping them. But it's...
I think the other thing is look, I don't know anything about the top level. I'm miles below that. But I do think, the DW is a race that you paddle your own race, and maybe Stuart would say the same. Even though you might be in it to win it, and there were probably 5 or 6 crews every year that say, right, we're going to enter, and our aim is to win, right? And if their bank crew can tell them, right, you're half an hour behind so and so, or you're 10 minutes up on whatever, that either spurs you on or demotivates you. And you'll find that crews that are in it to win it, generally, they won't all finish because they know they're not going to win it. And then the head goes, and then that's it. This race is about the head. It's not really about your body. I mean, you asked Stuart what he learned about himself. The one thing I learned was that if you can get your mind over your body, the chances are you'll finish. If you've done enough prep, you'll do it. I've pulled out for a number, I've pulled out for a number of reasons, mostly because of either injury or severe sickness, because I've eaten the wrong stuff or I've done something stupid, I've not eaten or whatever. But your mind can get over a lot of that if you can physically paddle. You see people arriving at Westminster in the most incredible states. People that have lost all their core muscle, their core strength, they're lying down in the boat almost. But the will to get to the end is what drives them there. People with, that have had sustained injuries on the canal that they've patched up or they've pulled a muscle and they've bandaged up and they've just paddled on. So it's about not necessarily, the real people in DW, not necessarily the people that win it, which obviously have great accolades and are great paddlers. It's those people. I often look at the people that have come through the most adversity, that have had to stop for 2 hours because their boat's broken, and they've had to have their support crew re-fiberglass it or whatever, rebuild the rudder gear. And then they have to sit on the cold bank for 2 hours trying to keep warm and then get in and go again, knowing that they might have missed the tide.
Yeah.
And have to wait at Teddington for another 6 hours or whatever it is until the tide changed.
One thing I was going to ask you, Hammersmith Bridge is closed. If you were to run the race, are you going to do portage around Hammersmith Bridge, or could you stop at? Do you have to stop at Hammersmith? What's the deal there?
No, we've looked at it. We have looked at it. Obviously, in the time we were thinking we would run this year, there is a portage. It's about a mile long, we think. Which is not really what you want to hear after paddling for that amount of time. But look, there's been instances where crews have missed the tide and they've portaged to the end.
You're kidding?
No,
that's not possible. Surely.
Well, it's only 17 miles, right?
You're joking. People have carried their
not many, but there's people that arrive at Teddington so far behind their schedule. There's people that have, I know people that have been so nervous about the conditions of the water around Kingston, so choppy on a Sunday afternoon in the singles race, that they've felt so unstable they've got out and they've portaged the last 3 or 4 miles to Teddington.
Yeah, wow. I guess.
But I think nobody really knows what's going to happen. I mean, there is talk. I think one of our directors was saying there's talk of opening a bit of it or some of the water underneath it for a period of time over next year. So I mean, we've got another year to wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
So fortunately, it's not one of the problems we've got to try to navigate this year.
Yeah. Adrian, just thinking we've been chatting for about an hour. Could go on for much longer actually. But what does it mean to Ludum to be involved in the race this year?
I think it's just great what they're trying to do, keep momentum with a sense of community. And I think for us being able to help them do that and make it a bit more engaging for everybody is really something that we're really proud to do, actually. And the guys do so much work to make this work. I just hope loads of people decide to sign up and make an event out of it, really.
And
almost a way of sealing off COVID.
Yeah. What have you had people sign up already, Paul and Stuart? I mean, what's the?
I mean, at the moment, we've got there's about 50 odd people that have signed up so far, and we've still got a week to go before it starts, and 10 weeks until it closes. So the plan is to keep it open, so you can, even though the race or the event starts, the challenge starts on the 2nd of April, you can still enter. You could enter at sort of up until the week before. So, if you decide that people decide they want to do it, they can carry on entering. So, we're not closing it down just yet. So, we'd hope to get a good few more, because I say the entry. It's a £10 entry fee, but that's pretty much going to charity. There'll be some costs for things like the buffs and prizes, but that's not a massive amount. The majority of it will be going to charity, so which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do it as well.
Yeah.
Yes, Martin, also some people have just signed up directly on our website, and I think what we said is that those people, Paul and Stuart, will email them directly to make sure they enter through the DW page. But they won't be disallowed, but that doesn't count as their entry on our website. They have to go through the DW site.
Yeah. Just over the years, what sort of changes have you seen in the DW? I mean, it seems like a fairly timeless race from where I'm sat now.
Well, it started in 1948. So and it was a bet in a pub. Actually, it first started going from Devizes to Pusey to Christchurch down the River Avon. And then it's got migrated to, can we get to London, in less than 100 hours? That was way back in the late 1940s, and it's gradually evolved into the event. Early years, I would say the military were massively dominant. It was a big thing for the military.
Really,
huge pride across the cap badges as to who would be the fastest boat, and then as a team prize as well. So you can enter 3 or 4 boats that you get the aggregate time across those boats, and then you have a team prize. So inter-regiment rivalry was quite strong. I don't know how true it is, but in the early days, the non-stop event was you had to be self-sufficient, so there were no bank crew.
Oh, really?
So you set off from Devizes and you waved goodbye, and then you stayed hello again at Westminster. And I don't know how true, but I'm sure there's an element of truth to it, that the military was so good that they had sort of covert ops feeding their paddlers along the way, sort of hanging out of trees or whatever. And just because they had such a large logistics operation, they could do it. So they would see it as a logistics operation. And then of course when the Royal Marines, or whether it would be the engineers, or whether it would be Remy or whatever, who would have the honour of winning. So for many years, the military crews were dominant force, and then civilian paddlers, as we'd call them, started to the military crews tended to kind of decide to do it around Christmas time and put 3 months training in, and that will be it. But then if you like, the best canoeists in the UK were starting to race in the 60s and 70s, when you started to see civilians winning it. And then I guess the latter evolution was the introduction of different classes. So you had the juniors do it over 4 days. Then we had the singles. I can't remember when that started, probably mid-80s or something like that. And then veteran junior, where I think the concept was father and son, or mother, daughter, or whatever, but it's much more sort of anybody over 35 and anybody under 18. And then we also have a non-competitive class which was introduced. So that's what we call the Endeavour. So these are people that maybe don't want to race; they just want to do it as a kind of do it over the 4 days, get a taster for it, and then maybe enter the next year. But I think that in its essence, other than having to be self-sufficient, which has now changed, where you can have support crew, I don't think it's changed in format, too much.
Yeah. Some of the safety equipment's changed, but because over the years there's been lots of people stretching the rules. So I mean, one of the rules used to be you used to have to have a top, thermal top and thermal bottoms for each paddler in the boat. But it didn't specify size. So in one year, somebody turned up with like an Action Man thing, because it's lighter. But and there's been developments in the rules that have been because people have looked at the rules and gone exactly to the rules. So now, after that they changed it so that they had to have tops and bottoms to fit the paddlers. It was just slight little bits, and there's always little bits of the rules that have changed. And one of the bits now is boats that has changed drastically. I mean, the ICF is the body that runs canoeing, and they have an ICF spec boat, and that's changed. But with the DW, you don't actually have to have the ICF spec boat, so it's not compulsory to paddle one. All it is if you're in a canoe, you can't have a rudder and you have to use a single blade, and if you're in a kayak, you can have a rudder and you use two-ended blades. That's it. You don't have to conform to the boat. Now, I'm surprised that lots of people haven't started making DW boats to make them faster and more stable, but it's something that everybody seems to stick to the ICF boats, which have got narrower and faster as the rules have changed with the ICF. So
I remember some of the rowers, Chris Martin and Ed Boynes. I think Chris Martin was an international rower who also rowed across the Atlantic, and they were going to do the DW, and they bought one of these very narrow boats, and they were trying to do it at Molesey, and they just basically kept falling out and falling out and falling out and falling out.
Yeah.
Couldn't paddle it at all. I'm guessing, presumably to win it, you have to be in a really narrow boat.
Well, most of the winners will be paddling what you call a top flight marathon boat. So the boat that I won in 2013 was, what world champions would have been in the marathon, or people would have been paddling the equivalent boat in the Olympics 2 years before. Yeah, it's exactly the same boat, and there are issues with that when you get to the Tideway, when you're tired and you're in a boat that's that unstable and you are really severely fatigued. Keeping it up is just an effort all in itself. I know there's probably I've got a picture on my wall of me in front of the Houses of Parliament with Dan in the back, just slap supporting. He's just supporting, bracing the boat because his core has completely gone and he can't actually paddle without falling over, sort of thing. So I'm having to get the boat into the to the bridge, and it's literally like hundreds of meters, but it's so choppy there. Yeah. It's a major consideration for anybody that's going to be paddling a narrow boat.
You see that on the senior race because I don't know how it works. Back to the tide discussion, but typically, I remember when I first did it, we were absolutely petrified of doing the Tideway. We'd never paddled it before, and we just thought if it's going to be big, we're just going to be swimming. We're going to swim 17 miles. But when we got there, it was like a mill pond. It was absolutely flat calm, and there were no river traffic on it at all because of the time. We were quite early in the morning, and 9 times out of 10, it tends to be like that for the seniors. But I've done it K1, and it's been horrendous, and I've all I can do is to stay upright rather than paddle forwards. It seems to be worse on the Monday morning. Maybe the tide's later. Maybe there's more river traffic than there would be on the Sunday morning, or the Saturday night. But but it is a horses for courses. And look, there's a class. There used to be a class, or there still is a trophy for the fastest homemade boat, seniors and juniors.
Wow.
That hasn't been given out for many years. Many years. In fact, it's mothballed in my shed because I don't think we'll ever give it out.
Yeah.
But some of the army crews do it in these folding boats. There's a folding boat class.
No.
These are the boats that the army would have used on missions, particularly maybe the SBS or the Marines. And these boats, I don't know how much they weigh. 20, 30 kilos. They've got, they're
more
wood
than that.
They're more than that, are they? They're wood with like a skin over them. And there's a specific trade for that. And these boats are, they're about 2 or 3 times as wide as the boat Stuart's described that he paddled in. So they're dead stable, but they're pretty hard to push through the water.
Yeah.
And these guys are donking that down for 125 miles. So again, hats off to them because I've paddled past those guys thinking, that must be such hard work to paddle that thing and carry it.
It's one of the most inspirational things that I've seen has been at the start of the race. There was an army crew that was starting about the same time as me, and they were in a Klepper, and we were talking about it, and they looked at my boat, which was, a 12 kilo K2 carbon fiber, and they sort of picked it up and were like, that's really light. And I went to pick theirs up, and they said, no, you have to use the strap. And it was because you couldn't pick it up from the front of the boat. You had to pick the strap up, put it over your shoulder and lift it up. And it must have weighed about 50, 60 kilos. It was ridiculous. And I just picking it up at the start, I thought I couldn't walk with that now over to the water. So how the hell are you going to do that when you've been paddling for 8 hours?
Yeah,
because they were going to be getting towards Reading, in 15 hours ish. So they'd have been paddling for so long. It would have been amazing.
There's a nice message from Ivan. I was going to say, actually, Ivan and I were at Hampton School together, and it's great that you're watching, Ivan, and thanks for tuning in. I remember you with much fondness and have been following your career as a kayaker since. I wanted to ask you, Stuart and Paul, how many more DWs have you got left in you?
I think for me, I'd love to do it non-stop again. I'd love to do it non-stop. I've got a really good friend. So as he's on the committee, so James is one of the directors. We used to do it. We did it for many years, and it'd be lovely to do it again. Just for I mean, I don't know whether I've got it in me. I mean, there are people much older than me that have done it, but I'd have to, then you're into this. I've always done it to try and do 20 hours, or I've never thought we're ever going to win it. I've never thought, for me, it's been, you do your time. If you're on schedule, if your time's good enough to get you a place, brilliant. But actually just get to the end. I think we'll be looking at significantly longer than 20 hours. And my body, I've been paddling since I was 20, so that's more years than I care to remember. I get aches in my wrists when I do a 6-mile paddle. My knees aren't that good for running anymore. I just think it's I'd love to do it, but I don't want to let anybody down. That's the other thing. I mean, Stuart talked about what you learn about yourself. I think the beauty of being in a K2 is that you don't want to let your mate down.
Yeah, behind
you or in front of you. And the couple of times that I've not finished have been when actually both of us have been at a really low ebb at the same time in the boat. You can cope if one of you's feeling really rough because the other guy just cheers you along and doesn't talk to you. It doesn't, basically you just don't mention about stopping. If you both feel bad and the first one that says, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get through to the next lock, then that's almost game over because then suddenly, you've decided between you can't do it. The race that I like, the stage race, so I've done it with all my kids. I've got 3 children. Unfortunately, with my daughter, with the 2 years, 1 year was when it was cancelled or stopped at Reading, and the other year I had really bad chest pains. I pulled a muscle in my ribs on one of the races before, and I just we shouldn't really have started, but obviously you've done all the training, so you have a go. So we pulled out on day 3 because I just couldn't paddle. But the 4-day event, I'm not saying it's easier. It's a different challenge. It's a very different challenge. So you finish the first day after 5-6 hours. You go to bed. You get up. Everything aches. You got to do it again, and then you got to do it the next day, and then you got to do it the next day. The non-stop event. I don't know about Stuart, but I never found I really ached during paddling. it's just like a constant numbness in your arms and your core. But actually, you're not don't have that stiffness that you get when you've done a really hard training session, because you're still training, you're still paddling.
Yeah. How about you, Stuart? How many years have you got left?
Well, I'm not sure I've got many years left, but I'd like to try and get into the 1,000 Miles Club, which is another 4 races.
Oh wow!
But whether it will be competitive, I don't know. I'd like to do at least a singles and a doubles in sort of, and be competitive. I don't know how realistic that is, but one thing about the DW is it's not about how fast you are necessarily, out and out speed, because by the time you get to the Tideway, a K2 on the Tideway that's just finishing the DW, I could almost paddle with my hands faster in a K1 when I was fresh. It's really going that slow. You really are not moving that much. So most people will do the Tideway in about 2 hours, 2 and a bit hours. In a K1, I did it in 1 hour and 34, I think. So it's a massive difference. You're talking, so it's not all about speed, but like I say, I'd like to be competitive. Particularly once I've done it once more in K2, then I'd be happy to just sort of let it go.
Yeah,
I think.
That's the 1,000 Mile Club is a good incentive for people like Stuart that have they've done really well. They've got the names on the trophies. They might be thinking, I'm not sure I can win it again, but I might get a place. But when you get to 5 or 6 DW, the 1,000 Mile Club is looming on the horizon. Yeah, and you think, actually 2 more and then I'm in it. Yeah. And I can tell you a story. So when I did it with one of my children, and we were on the Tideway, sort of quite high up the Tideway. So we were, I can't think where it was, maybe Kew or somewhere. And 3 boats came towards us, 3 big pleasure boats, absolutely stonking up against the tide. And I don't know how we stayed upright, but there was about 10 or 12 boats all around us, kayaks all around us, sort of paddling down this Tideway. And we all looked at each other as this flotilla came up. And I said to my son, right, just brace. We're not going to paddle through this. Just brace, and it'll be about 10 minutes of just like paddling on the sea, and we'll be all right. We're not going to fall out of this boat. But we had a K1 near us, and I won't tell you who it was, but it was a guy that was doing his 8th DW. He was getting in the 1,000 Mile Club, and he was really panicking about these waves coming towards us. So we sort of went with him towards the side. And he actually went into the side, and he held onto the bank, and my wife was there, and he got out the boat. He got out the boat and got his boat on the embankment. Right, that's it. I can't finish. And he took an enormous amount of persuasion to get back in and finish to get his 1,000 miles. Yeah, and he wouldn't have. Without the people on the bank, and we talked about the competitiveness. Earlier. Yeah, the support crews are just fantastic. They will support anybody, because safety is the most important thing, and paddler safety is paramount here. But if you see a paddler in the water in trouble, it's not what you can do in a boat, but the support crew can really help. I mean, the number of times on the stage race that my support crew has not got to the lock because of traffic, they can't get there. So you arrive and you're desperate for that drink or that jelly baby or whatever you're going to eat, and no one's there for you. Yeah. But the support crew of all the other crews will feed you. They'll give you what they got. They'll open up their little box and say, right, what do you want? Chocolate brownie, Mars bar, Twix, Snickers, jelly baby, bit of orange, anything like that. And that's where the camaraderie comes in, And I think you'd have that. Any support crew would help any paddler.
Listen, guys, I'm gonna. I think to start to draw it to a close. There's obviously loads. We could go on forever talking about this and stories. I just wonder if there's anything that we haven't said about the DW race this year, or the DW, the legend that is the DW that needs to be said, that we haven't already talked about.
I think this year is different. we're trying to keep the brand alive. We want to raise money for a very worthy cause, which is the Dorothy House charity, and you know, we want to get out to the community, get paddlers out there, you know. And if doing My DW is the reason you want to get out in your boat and paddle 3 times a week, then that's brilliant. I think the other thing about the wider DW that I would say is, you know, you don't have to be a canoeist today to do it next year. There's plenty of people that hear about it and see it as a challenge for them, and they'll, you know, we would urge them to go to a canoe club, you know, learn how to paddle properly, and it's the only race they ever do is DW. Then brilliant. But you know, you don't have to be a world champion kayak to do DW.
That'll be me next year.
Oh, there you are. Absolutely, Aidan. Yeah. And maybe Martin.
Yeah, I know. Ivan's already put.
Oh, there you are.
It's whether Ivan's offering to take you down.
Yeah, that'd be fearsome. I think knowing about Ivan. Guys, it's been amazing. I could literally talk all morning, and I think we nearly have actually. But it's been great, Paul and Stuart, and to have you and Adrian too from Ludum supporting this year's race. If it's whetted your appetite to get to a canoe club, then please do look up your local canoe club and join that. If you're a paddler and it's whetted your appetite to get involved, then sign up on the website, on the DW website, and you too could be part of this great event. Thank you very much, Paul, Stuart, and Adrian, for joining Crossy's Corner. It's been a unique one this morning. It's been a great pleasure as well. We'll end the live part of this broadcast now. Thanks, guys.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.